This wedding was an assignment for my Religion 2 class in Catholic school.
This one's wife. The alarm bells rang, but nothing was done. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. This channel is about narcissism and psychopathy. As a narcissistic psychopath myself, I enable you to understand the way that I look at the world. As a consequence of the fact that I have engaged with many of my kind, they're in my family, I've worked with them, I've hunted them down, I have them in my social groups. I recognize my kind very quickly. I'm also able to explain to you the way that my kind function, think and operate, to help you gain insight into the different types of narcissist that exist. Nobody spots a narcissist the first time they come along. They may not even be familiar with what the concept of a narcissist is, or if they are, they don't know the full ins and outs of what's involved. They don't know all of the intricacies. They don't recognize the manipulations. They don't understand the dynamic. Those who have accessed my work recognize clearly and fully the advantages that it confers. And as part of ensuring that people understand all about narcissism, I created this channel as part of the extension of my legacy so that people were able to get the information that was required, and to enable people to make the link, I put people under the Tudor scope. Accordingly, Amber Heard, Johnny Depp, Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith, Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Vladimir Putin, Armie Hammer. All of those individuals have been examined to determine whether they are narcissists or not. Boris Johnson, Derek Jackson, Shane Dawson. These individuals, along with Taylor Swift, they've been examined because by allowing you to understand the behaviors of certain people who are prominent and famous, it enables me to reach more people. And of course, fundamental to all of that is this one's wife. Somebody that many, many people are interested in. But one thing that is quite clear is that notwithstanding the fact that I identified her narcissism first all those years ago, and that I have regularly explained to people about this is what drives her behavior, there are still many people who don't truly comprehend that that's the case. There are many people who truly don't get it, that that is what is actually governing her behavior. That there are people that don't understand the whys and wherefores of her behavior are caused by her narcissism. So often in the comments section, still below the line, one sees people querying, but why should she do this? What does this mean? When it's already been explained by reference to her narcissism. It was also evident in those that I've spoken to in the conversation series, that there are certain individuals who don't really grasp that it's the narcissism that's driving the behavior. And it's so important for people to understand this, not just in relation to this one's wife, who actually has very little impact upon your own day-to-day lives, but also because there's a very good chance that you will have become involved with a narcissist at some point in your life. There are people who have contacted me to state that they hadn't realised until they accessed the This One's Wife series that in actual fact they were involved with the narcissist, and had opened their eyes to that, which of course is a huge advantage. There are others that didn't realise about it until, for instance, they accessed the series on Jada Pinkett Smith or Amber Heard or Taylor Swift and such like. This lack of awareness remains prevalent, and it's why it's so easy for my kind to do what we do, that we are able to move amongst people, manipulating them, gathering our fuel, crushing people's lives, because people simply don't see it for what it is. They think it's something else. They attribute the behaviours to something else. And this was the case even for the royal family when it came to this one's wife. Daniela Elsa writes for news.com.au The time has long, long since passed that the Buckingham Palace Works Department, or Prince Philip back in the day armed with a screwdriver, should have installed an alarm bell. A bell which could have been used, say, when Prince Andrew brought around his chums Ghislaine Maxwell and Kevin Spacey to let them sit on the actual real thrones. Or for when Andrew boarded a flight to New York to holiday with a bloke called Jeffrey. Or for when Andrew would shout and scream at maids if they didn't perfectly place his 50 or 60 stuffed toys on his bed. Or really, for when Andrew and his ego left the house every day. Now, we have the Daily Mail's Richard Eden reporting that if the palace had had one of these particular bells, maybe one with some sort of flashing red light that emits a really ear-piercing whoop whoop, it would have been going off in 2018 after the wedding of Prince Harry and this one's wife, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Well, pausing there, it would have gone off far earlier. It would have gone off far earlier around the time of her being introduced to the royal family and in particular the engagement interview. That it would have gone off much earlier were the royal family familiar with what narcissism was and what this one's wife is, that they could have seen it far sooner. A royal source told Eden, this one's wife's public disagreements with her father set alarm bells ringing at the time. Her Majesty realised the potential damage they could do to the royal family in general. Looking back, the Queen might have had an inkling of what was to come. Now, the Queen has dealt with many narcissists in her time, but probably didn't actually realise that that's what she was dealing with, nor the intricacies of those involvements. She'll have described them undoubtedly as difficult people, awkward people, angry people, without fully appreciating that she was dealing with the narcissist. And thus, whilst those alarm bells might have been ringing, the red flags might have been flying, they didn't actually understand what they meant, and look where it got them to. Elsa continues by stating, so let's cast our minds back to that northern summer, when the fields rippled with golden wheat and Crown ink was bathed in the reflected glow of the Sussex's big day, an event I am legally required to term fairy tale. Oh, it was lovely. Positively darling buds of Meghan. Love had won and the monarchy had looked out for their newest recruit. But wait, what's this? Entering the frame comes the baddie of the piece, Thomas Markle. When news broke in May 2018 that Markle, a retired lighting director, had been in cahoots with the paparazzi, he wasted little time and within days he was talking to TMZ. He has not stopped since. As I've explained to you, his own narcissism has driven such behaviour by virtue of the necessity of nullifying the threat to control posed by his daughter's disengagement of him and his frequent and repeated pity plays. In 2022, this one's wife told the Netflix cameras that during this deeply upsetting time, she had gone to no less than the top lady, as Diana, Princess of Wales nicknamed the late Queen, for help. I reached out to Her Majesty and was like, this is what's going on, what do you want me to do? I want whatever advice you have, the Duchess said. Ultimately, it was suggested by the Queen and the Prince of Wales, now the King Charles, that I write my dad a letter. So this one's wife duly did this, posting off a lengthy handwritten letter, only for Markle to then give chunks of it to the Mail the following year. He did this in retaliation, nullification of threat to control, after some lines from the letter had been published by People. It was about at this stage, in this particular soap opera, that according to Eden's royal source, that palace alarm was going off, whoop whoop, whoop whoop. However, Her late Majesty should have been used to exactly this. And one fact that never gets discussed is that by this point in 2018, she had already had decades of experience with royal brides, their troublesome families, and their propensity to run to the press. First, there was Diana, whose messy, unhappy family life was part of her public image from the very beginning. The princess had been deeply scarred by her parents' vicious divorce, one so toxic it had seen her own maternal grandmother, Ruth, Lady Fermoy, give evidence in court during custody proceedings against her mother, Frances Shand Kidd. In 1996, as Diana and Charles were locked in their own divorce negotiations, Shand Kidd spoke to the Express, telling them that the press was partly to blame for the royal split. The following year, only 3 months before Diana's death, Shand Kidd would give a lengthy 2-part interview with Hello that was splashed all over the cover, including that she thought it was absolutely wonderful that her daughter had lost her HRH. The princess never spoke to her mother again. Things were no better with Diana's stepmother, Countess Rain Spencer, whom she nicknamed Acid Rain. With Rain cast as a wicked stepmother in the papers, the two women would make up and grow quite close in the final years of Diana's life. Then there is Major Ronald Ferguson, Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York's father. Not long after Andrew and Fergie's 1986 wedding, the palace has started becoming concerned about what they called Ferguson's errors of judgment, according to the Times. In 1988, the Major was photographed leaving a massage parlour, which also allegedly offered sexual services. Courtiers were also reported to view the Major's willingness to give press interviews as regrettable. They were aghast when he joined Dame Edna Everage on stage for a charity fundraiser, and after finding out that he agreed to do a TV quiz show, insisted that he withdraw. In 1994, Ferguson published a tell-all called The Galloping Major, with the Times described as a foolhardy enterprise that saw him only embarrassing himself further. When in 2018 this one's wife was mired in her own family drama, it was often framed as a byproduct of a sort of tawdry Americanism or some personal failing on her own part, when it was actually par for the course. And pausing there, if they had actually known what she was, they would recognise that in actual fact it wasn't to do with being a tawdry Americanism, it wasn't to do with being a personal failing, it was all about her narcissism, and that was what was governing her behaviour. Elsa writes, the Duchess and her parental woes were not the exception, but the actual damn rule. You would think that, at that point in time, Buckingham Palace would have been old hands at dealing with the irksome and idiotic antics of the families of royal brides, rather than just letting that alarm bell ring, ring, ring. It would seem not. Here we are, 6 years later, with neither Harry nor this one's wife on particularly good or any terms with their fathers, and with Buckingham Palace still having failed to install that Andrew alarm. This highlights the necessity of understanding the behaviour of the narcissist, particularly in relation to this one's wife, that if they realised, and having been expertly advised, certain parties do now, but if they had realised at an earlier juncture what they were dealing with, not just in relation to this one's wife, but also her father and her mother, and in relation to other relatives of people that came into the royal family, they would have been able to respond in a far more effective manner to dealing with the difficulties that these individuals pose. And once again, this demonstrates the importance of my work and how fundamental it is for people to understand that it is the behaviour of the narcissist, not somebody with a temper, not somebody who's high maintenance or highly strung, not somebody who's overly sensitive. Those are often descriptions that are applied to narcissists which are erroneous. But it is so important for people to recognise the behaviour of the narcissist, and in particular, in relation to the behaviour of this one's wife. That is why she does as she does. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.